Okay, does anybody here consider themselves to be in operations or ops? Oh, we got a few? That's awesome. Does anybody carry the pager themselves? Anybody have, do you get calls when there's system outages? Not very many, or no one wants to admit it. Why do we call it a pager still?
Depends on the product.
Depends on the product? Yeah? Awesome. Well, I guess we can get started. All right. So I'm excited to be here today. I had the opportunity to speak here last year. I spoke on continuous delivery, and I really love this conference. I got the sleepy portion of the day for you guys, so I'm aiming mostly to keep you awake. If I do any better than that, that is purely by accident. So I apologize ahead of time. If you happen to be at Midwest I/O, which is another great local conference, you may have seen a lot of what I plan to talk about today, presented as voice-controlled ChatOps for the remote worker. But first, I'm going to talk about those things today, but I want to talk to you about lean and agile product development. So does this look familiar to anybody in the room? To a degree, it should. It comes from a paper entitled New Product Management for the 1980s. It's from Booz Allen and Hamilton. It was written in 1982. And it's sort of the original model for most of what today's product development models are built on. It may remind you of that thing that we've marked in the Agile community as wrong, which is waterfall. But I want to focus on the end bit and share with you an excerpt from this awesome paper. Commercialization involves the full-scale market introduction of newly developed products. As new products enter the market, ongoing customer feedback should be actively sought and ensure that the product meets and ideally exceeds the customer's expectation. So any new product bugs that are identified should be quickly remedied. Aside from ensuring a trouble-free marketplace introduction, executives must carefully monitor competitors' reaction and their new product offerings, taking steps when necessary to counteract competitive responses. So even back in 1982, we knew that product development should be tied into that commercialization. So as an Agile community, we need to embrace that running our application in production is a part of actual product development. So I also want to talk to you about an idea that may be foreign to the way that you work currently at your company. Dr. Werner Vogels, the CTO of Amazon, famously said, "You build it, you run it." That's the way they do things at Amazon. But the full quote of that is, "Giving developers operational responsibilities has greatly enhanced the quality of services both from a customer and a technology point of view. The traditional model is that you take your software to the wall that separates development and operations and throw it over and then forget about it. Not at Amazon. You build it, you run it. This brings developers into contact with the day-to-day operation of their software. It also brings them into day-to-day contact with the customer. This customer feedback loop is essential for improving the quality of service." This is a key piece of management structure and an ideal that I actually believe in the teams that I've ran in the past. This was published in 2006. You guys have seen what Amazon has been able to do over the course of the last 10 years. They pretty much, their software is eating the world. So we fall into this unfortunate trap that the more people that you have to manage and control a non-lean process, the more complex that it becomes. The more complex the non-lean process comes, the more you think you need more people to manage and control it, right? So you get these overblown processes where you've got tons and tons of people. So responding to incidents needs to be as lean as possible. This can be done by the team that developed the solution so that they're not consumed by the work and still have time to develop those all-important features. Outages are also increasingly expensive. Studies are showing that the average cost per minute is approaching $10,000. So this was a really interesting study that was done. Trying not to veer off too far, but 25% of the time data center outages are due to the UPS or the backup solution, basically the power supply that's supposed to back things up, not actually working, which is something that people don't normally test. Which on average, this actually costs the company as much of on average, $250,000. Something I've come across multiple times over the last couple of years is how to use Twitter for outages. I'm still trying to decide how I feel about this, but Twitter has these numbers to share on their blog. It costs about 1/6 as much as call centers. So you hear your friends, or maybe you do this too, often complain on Twitter when there's an outage from a service. And a lot of times the companies that get back to you right away are the ones that you actually trust more. And it's actually a lot cheaper than setting up call centers. It can lead to over 95% of the issues being resolved in channel, right there in place, and can achieve a customer satisfaction rating of over 90%. Like, how awesome is that, that you complain about something and you don't even have to go find where to complain about it. You just complain about it out in the ether, and then someone gets back to you with a resolution. So many people I've talked to have pushed back about whether incidents are part of the responsibility of the product development team. I strongly believe that we will see a shift to this if you haven't already in your products. On many teams that I've worked with over the past several years, whether it's recognized as a responsibility of the team or not, production outages and incidents create a considerable amount of unplanned work and interruptions, so it's in everyone's best interest to get them under control. So I plan to share with you the work that my team has done to respond to incidents. If you don't mind, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. I am a remote worker, so your mileage may vary on my views. My name is Blythe. I've worked in software for over 15 years. I've contributed code to a number of open source projects, including Chef, a lot of Chef community cookbooks, Hubot plugins, and many others. I've had the title of software engineer, where I'd write code all day. I've had the title of architect, where I would write code, and when I wasn't in meetings, or writing boxes and arrows with markers all over a board. Now I'm an automation and system engineer. I've also managed as many as 17 people at a single time, and I've owned personally dozens of Kanban and Scrum boards, both physical and electronic. And most importantly, I'm a level 21 Pokemon trainer, and I also have organized the DevOps KC meetup for the last 3.5 years, and I just organized our first DevOps days here in Kansas City. So I work from home, so this is what I look like driving in this morning. I honestly don't really get out that much. So remote work is a lifestyle change. It's not for everyone, however I believe that everyone should try it, at least for a while. I read this particular book called Remote, Office Not Required, and it literally changed my life. I recommend reading this book to understand the benefits of working remotely. Depending on where you're at in life, I also recommend that you give it a try. Again, your mileage is going to vary on whether that's right for you. Since I started working remotely, this blog, Signal v Noise, has been published. Signal v Noise is from 37 Signals, the company started by DHH, or David Heinemeier Hansen, and Jason Fried. They also wrote the book Remote. Here you can see the reasons that this engineer that authored the blog has taken time to explain why he loves working remote. Whether you work remote or not, if you work in technology, I recommend taking account of what you like about your situation regularly, at least every couple years. And if you don't like it, then change it, right? My personal reasons are different than this individual. While I do feel more productive than I did when I was in meet space meetings all day, that's not the reason that I personally work remotely. I have young children, and now I see them more now than I did in their first few years of their life. I also have a 7-month-old daughter, and I've been able to see more of her daily life than I did my first 2 daughters. So, at first we thought it would be really hard, but it hasn't been. It's as simple as installing some doors on the office that I've had, and when Daddy's at work, he's at work, right? And if the doors are closed, then he's at work. Here you can see my setup. I have a standing desk. I have a monitor where I can see the other people on my team in a persistent chat, and a monitor where I do all of my chatting in my different chat clients. And then I have my main work area, which is just my laptop. And then I have that extra Mac over there for, like, listening to music and stuff, so I can keep this processor free for spinning up Vagrant and Docker and everything else. I work for Hearst Business Media. You may be aware of our company from our vast array of newspapers and magazines, news organizations that we run. If anybody reads Elle or Cosmo, That's us, so that's awesome. Hearst also owns quite a few content-based companies that operate under their own brand. I work with companies in the space of automotive, financial, and healthcare, and I basically work as an internal consultant helping these companies automate and move their existing software from their data centers into AWS. So I work in these 2-week engagements, and each of the business units, which I'll probably call like BUs, because that's like the word we use. Or you guys probably have your own nomenclature for everything, so that's one of ours. So I've been out to a bunch of their offices. This saves over hiring external consultants. Plus, there's an added benefit that I'm still around after that engagement's over. A lot of our companies actually hire these outside consultants, and as soon as the engagement's over, they're gone, and then they have to like take over all of this software. So I use AWS, Chef, Sumo Logic, New Relic, PagerDuty, Hubot, Slack, and a bunch of other things. So that brings us to ChatOps. Has anybody heard of ChatOps before? Only one? Two? A couple? A few? Our team provides Slack for all of our business units. Has anybody heard of Slack? Does anybody use Slack regularly? Awesome, that's what I'm going to be showing today. So I've worked with a few of the BUs on actually setting up their ChatOps, which can be simply explained as a way of getting artificial intelligence into your interactions. If you've never heard of ChatOps, I'll be showing a few examples in just a minute. If you are interested, there's a great introduction by Jason Hand, who works at VictorOps. It's a free download, and it's super awesome. To do ChatOps, you need two things: a chat client and a bot. I personally use Slack and Hubot currently, but I've used HipChat and IRC in the past. Hubot plugins are written in Node.js, which is the code that I've been writing recently, and CoffeeScript. And LeanAgileKC is written in Ruby, and AirBot is written in Python. If you're starting out with Slack, the simplest way to get started is to add an app or integration. There's a bunch of apps and integrations that are created by companies, and you simply click and you add them in. You may have to put some kind of token in, and then they'll start working. So we've added a number of integrations. These help put that story in a timeline flow in our Slack channel. Here you see our GitHub integration. So as I'm checking things into GitHub, I'm getting updates, or if anyone else on my team is checking things into GitHub, we get updates directly into the room, so we know when things are actually happening. We also see the New Relic integration, where this is a monitoring tool that we have. So if like CPU or if errors start happening, we'll get updates in there. And then those will be actually integrated in with our code commits. So if a code's committed, and then we actually can tie that story together. And then finally we have PagerDuty, and this is when we've defined something in our monitoring, or we've actually manually kicked off a trigger to say that an incident is actually happening. Slack integrations have a really cool benefit of the quick setup with minimal configuration. They're often managed by other companies, so you don't have to write the code for them. However, the big drawback is they're often such a simplistic workflow that they might not actually be what you want to do. Which brings us to Hubot. So Hubot allows the ability to start entering our own logic into this system. Hubot plugins are written in CoffeeScript, which compiles down to JavaScript. However, the syntax is much more Ruby-like. So disclaimer, these examples are really silly. However, they're the ones from the examples in the Hubot README. So in the first example, we see here and send. So anytime that someone says the word badger in the room, the bot will say, badgers? Badgers? We don't need no stinking badgers. For the second example, we see respond and reply. Here you have to actually address the bot by saying the bot's name. So if the bot's name was bot, you would say bot and say open the bay doors. The bot would respond or reply actually with the name of the person that said that, and then I'm afraid I can't let you do that. So while this is not deep artificial intelligence such as like machine learning or consciousness or anything like that, it is like talking to someone that can get you that information. So we sometimes refer to our bot as our intern that's always willing to go and grab that information for us. At some point, you're going to need to persist the data so that you can actually have a more stateful transaction, similar to the way you work with the web. So it's fairly simple in the code to do this. You'd simply invoke the robot brain and either get or set things into the brain. And by default, this is a Redis store, so you have a name-value pair that you can just pull right out by the name later on. Hubot has all kinds of awesome plugins that are already out there in the open source community. I've already contributed code to all of these, one for PagerDuty, one for Confluence. I actually wrote the Sumo Logic one from scratch because there wasn't one out there. So here I'm interacting with the New Relic plugin that's connected to our New Relic monitoring. This saves me from having to go out to New Relic and open up my monitoring. I can simply say the name of my bot, @bot New Relic apps. And then it's going to tell me if there's any errors in my application. Or I can say @bot New Relic servers. And I quickly can scan and see the memory and disk and CPU on my machine to see if there's any issues. So as we start to define what an incident is, for our team, it's any situation that impacts the ability of customers, whether those customers are internal or external, to consume or use a system or service in a safe and secure manner. So it's our goal to do all of that maintenance and paperwork and system connecting so that our engineers, when there is an incident, can do the thing that they do best. Get straight on the system and start troubleshooting and debug the system and get it back up and running. So it's inevitable that you're going to have incidents or outages. So we need to go through the methods to cope with this chaos. Sometimes those incidents, they're actually a surprise. However, sometimes you see them coming, but there's little that you can do about it. So incidents can come on and be surprising, and you may totally see it. The key is to remain calm. Let's see that guy again. One more time. So as a user, I interact with Slack to manage the state of the incident. Slack will interact with Hubot, and Hubot makes a call to PagerDuty and then posts in the Slack channel. This will make all the actions that I have during the incident visible to everyone on my team. Has anybody here ever heard of webhooks? Know what they are? There's a couple people nodding. I'm not doing my job of keeping you guys awake. I had never really heard of webhooks other than they were just that they were a thing. In the last year, I started using them regularly and started implementing my own. So a webhook is a method of augmenting or altering behavior of a web application with custom callbacks. It's kind of like if you think of when you click on a button, if anybody's familiar with how GUIs work, you have an event loop actually going all the time. And someone clicks on a button, and when that actually triggers it, then you actually start going into the code, right? So in PagerDuty, I have two webhooks. One of them's for Slack, and one of them's from the Hubot plugin that I've written related to incidents. When an event occurs in PagerDuty, then it broadcasts to these endpoints. On the Slack side, I create some incoming endpoints in the tool and tie them to the room and with a specific token. And I'm not actually going to show you my tokens here, but this is how you set them up. You actually just put the tokens into your Slack, and it's that simple. There's a lot of these. The one of the webhooks that I'm using, I didn't have to write any code for. I just simply had to use the token. So it's important to our team that everything goes through PagerDuty. So if I do things in PagerDuty, whether it comes through Slack or not, whether it comes through the application, whether I'm using it on the web or the actual app on the phone, or if I text something in, I want to make sure that everything goes back through the system. It's going to send events through these webhooks, and then it'll update both the Slack room and Hubot. So every second counts. As we discussed at the beginning, the average downtime cost to a business is about $10,000 per minute that the website is down. So we've built a workflow for incidents that leans this down to the things that absolutely have to happen. We continue to refine this as we work with each of our BUs, and we continue to automate each of the steps. So then the DevOps team or the developers can get in and actually fix incidents as fast as possible. So these are the states that we actually move through. The first one is that an event is actually started or triggered, and we want to ensure that we're not impeding this workflow at all. So here I'm triggering the incident in a bot, but it actually could be triggered anywhere. So I simply, the name of this bot is called BUBot. So BUBot, pager, trigger, the name of the schedule, and then some information. And then that actually kicks off my incident. The next step is when it's acknowledged. So I start typing things in the room. The first thing I should probably do is actually acknowledge the incident, and eventually I do that with BUBot, pager, ACK, and then the number of the incident. This lets the rest of the room know that I'm actually the one that's working on this, so they can continue to work on features or whatever it is that they're working on, and then they know that I will contact them, but I'm pretty much taking point for this, and I've acknowledged it. It's also really important for one of the measures that I'm going to show you in a minute called MTTA. This is mean time to acknowledgement, and this is something you want to measure over time. After I've finished and I have the incident taken care of, my next step is to resolve the incident, which is really important to our measure of MTTR, our mean time to recovery, or mean time to resolution. And I do this, again, very simply with saying BUBot, pager, resolve, and then the incident number. Again, I can do this through the chat room, or I can do this through the web app or the app on the phone, or through a text. And then eventually, this part is not part of PagerDuty's work. We have closed. So things aren't closed until we hold a post-mortem. So very similar to a retrospective on an agile team, anytime you have an incident, you should hold a blameless post-mortem. Blameless post-mortems are extremely important to me. I recently did a talk at LeanAgileKC about failure and the third way, where I talk about just culture. If you're going to have a system where you actually, or a group of people where you actually learn, you can't have blame. You can have one or the other. So if you're entering blame into the system, then you're probably not going to be learning over time. So those metrics that I was talking about earlier, MTTA and MTTR, this is how you measure whether you're doing things better or not. And this actually helps you as a very important lean and agile metric, because this is kind of the amount of time that you have on those interruptions or those unplanned incidents, and the count of those. I know that the teams that I've ran where I have Kanban boards in the past, this is something that it's really hard to get a handle on, is how many times is my team getting interrupted? Because it's somebody else's responsibility to run the operations. They're the ones that are running the incidents. I want my development teams to be part of this, and actually I want to be able to measure this over time and make sure that they're part of the roll call. Have you ever been on one of those calls? You know, the bridge, where you've got that manager that's just silently listening, and everyone's kind of awkwardly, they know that they're on, because they when they got on, it's like, who's joined the call? And they just kind of hide in the background. We want visibility at our company, so what we've been doing is we actually have all of the managers and the executives in the Slack rooms. And this has been a big culture change. They're in there regularly. So instead of them trying to call up and trying to find the person who's in charge of the incident, they can go see in real time what's actually going on from the tools and from the people actually having the conversation, trying to figure out what's going on in the incident. Further, what we've automated is everything that's said in that room from the time that that incident starts to the time it ends is logged out. And then that's pushed over into PagerDuty as notes. So then when we go to have that blameless postmortem, we already have a list of everything that happened. Because the first thing you want to do when you have a blameless postmortem is recreate the timeline with facts. And facts of what people thought and why they made those decisions. So since we're having the conversation in this room and we actually see what the tools are putting in there and we actually see what the humans are putting in there, we've got a pre-created timeline that's just a URL and makes that blameless postmortem go swimmingly right at the beginning, because everyone can get right on page by going to that URL and seeing what went on during the incident. We've done a lot of this work on our own, but we work with our BUs to figure out the appropriate thing. I can't automate this without actually working with the team, because like if you've ever seen the way that alerts come in, sometimes it can get a little crazy depending on how the automated system is set up. This reminds me of the automated system that I had before we started using New Relic at a previous job, which was Zabbix, because we did not have any type of correlation. So one thing that I ran into just last night is that there's pagination after 25 events. So when I was running through this demo, it got stuck on incident 308 because I had been testing so much, and my latest alert did not actually work. So we'll see that when I attempt a live demo here in a couple minutes. So all of the work for the incident bot workflow that I've shown you is actually open source. We continue to update this as we learn more from our BUs, and we continue to customize it to their specific needs. And we've actually started writing our own bot, because Hubot was not fitting the bill for us. We were writing a completely open source bot that we would love to have more help with, called Slappy, or the Slack API. So we want to actually take advantage. Hubot's kind of lowest common denominator, and it works in like IRC and AOL Instant Messenger. It works in every chat client you could ever think of, so it doesn't actually take advantage of Slack itself. We also want to be able to write our plugins in any language that's out there. A lot of our BUs use .NET languages, so we want the ability for them to just write things in .NET and not have to learn a new language like Node or CoffeeScript. And we're using Docker as the packaging system to do that, which makes things really cool, because you just like take your script, you package it up as a Docker container, and as long as you meet our API, it'll work. So I talked a lot about chat clients, but text-based communication does have its limitations. So one of the most important parts of human communication is seeing that other person's eyes and mouth while they're actually talking to you. So as a remote worker, we use a tool called Sakoko. So I have this persistent chat client up all day, and I can actually see all the people on my team. This is a screenshot just from the web. This is not my actual team. And humor is another important piece, which is why we have a culture of using fun GIFs to lighten the mood. So we've open sourced. We've seen a lot of people use Giphy, or Jiffy, or however you say it. Giphy's right. Inside of Slack, where you go out and you like get these funny GIFs from the internet, and it posts them in the room. A lot of them are not suitable for work, so we wrote one that's actually suitable for work, so you can plug this right into Hubot. So now for the cool part, and at the point I'm losing my voice. The voice controlled part. So first thing you need to do to start moving to the voice controlled part is you need a personal assistant. I've used Siri on my phone for a couple of years to like OK type of results. I have a OK Google type of watch. I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing my new Fitbit, and that one's all right for looking things up. However, the Amazon ecosystem is probably the most flexible, because it allows me to write code very quickly in just a little bit of code, and I can go do the things that I actually want to do. So I'm crazy, and everybody told me not to do a demo. What do you guys think? Should I do a demo? Yeah?
And you're crazy.
Oh, well. We'll probably see a big ball of fail, because the Wi-Fi here is not very good and the thing keeps on losing connection, so this should be fun. All right. Alexa, start Slacker.
What would you like to post in Slack?
Start demo mode.
You are not seriously going to try to do a demo in front of all of these people, are you?
Yes, that is the plan.
Okay, what could go wrong? You are planning on using the Echo, right? Hopefully not that janky Raspberry Pi.
Create a new incident for demo.
I have told the Slack room to create a new incident for demo.
Conference Wi-Fi. So what happened there is I told the Alexa, like the picture I showed you earlier, Alexa, stop. I told the Echo that I wanted to create an incident, right? The incident could have been created for monitoring or any number of things. So I created that incident, and then my bot comes in, and it says that it's now triggering an incident, which sends it off to PagerDuty. This is that Slack integration that I told you about at the beginning that's really easy to set up. From here, I could hit acknowledge or resolve. Or what we're going to do is we're going to try keep going with this demo since it hasn't broken yet. But here's the important part, and this is the part that I'm automating for each of the teams to try to get this down. So when an incident starts, again, every second's going to count because we're talking about thousands of dollars here, right? So we have the reminders. Acknowledge the incident in PagerDuty. That's the first thing that we should do. But I'm going to go through the list instead of just acknowledging it right away. Notify support. We have, for some of our groups, like we've automated that and it goes into their system. As a demo in front of you here, I don't want to get everybody all excited on the support side at one of the companies, so we're not going to do that. Check the other tools, Sumo Logic, New Relic, to see what's actually in there. Update the public client status page. So some of our clients or businesses use either like status.io or statuspage.io, which are both awesome products. And then email your client contact DL. So each of these, like, we can automate, but if in the case where they haven't been automated yet, we just show them the checklist. So Alexa, start Slacker. Alexa, start Slacker.
What would you like to post in Slack?
Acknowledge latest pager incident.
I have told PagerDuty to acknowledge incident number 325.
Display the servers from New Relic.
The latest server information should now show in the Slack room.
Applause. No? Oh. So here we've acknowledged the thing. That's the first thing we should do. And then we would check and see where the system's at. So I can quickly see, like if CPU is going crazy somewhere, like then maybe I could get this fixed quickly instead of doing that email chain type of thing or looking up in like 6 different tools where everything's at. We want to make sure that we're measuring this in seconds instead of hours and a number of emails. And then once I've got everything all finished up, what I do to finish things off is say, Alexa, start Slacker. Alexa, start Slacker.
What would you like to post in Slack?
Resolve latest pager incident.
I have told PagerDuty to resolve incident number 325.
And again, with you see that we automate this, but here's the checklist of the things you should do when everything is done. You update the public client status page, email your client contacts DL, and then schedule that post-mortem, which is really important. One thing that I haven't done yet, which I really want to do, is go interrogate Office 365 through its API, look at the people's calendars for the next 2 days that are either, like the list could be everyone that's in the room that has joined the room, or it could be like everyone that's on a particular team or group or DL in Outlook 365, and then just find a spot on the calendar in the next 48 hours where everyone's available within the parameters of the hours of the work hours and everything. But I haven't got to that yet, so hopefully I can. Yes.
So is it creating a new channel for every incident, or do you have a persistent incident channel where people are just part of?
For here, we're the most normal thing that we do is, so a lot of people think they want separate channels and stuff, but we found that like once we really dig down into it, they don't, because it's really hard to track. Because then like here in Slack, I'm already in tons of rooms or channels or whatever, so you start adding more channels and it makes it a lot harder. But so here we have a persistent channel, the same channel. Yes.
Follow up to that. So when you said to figure out who to schedule the online schedule meeting with, if you have a persistent Slack channel, you might have people on there that are just there from a previous incident or just there. So they just mass schedule, and then if they need to deny, they decline.
So yeah, it's all of our business operate different. So some of them are smaller and have like the people that would be in the channel would be the ones that you would have to go out, because then you actually have to do a little bit of munging of data, because you have to figure out like their identity in Slack, which is not tied to their Office 365 in our environment. I know at the company that you're at, like the identity is super awesome, and that's really easy to do. That's really hard to do at a lot of companies. I'm finding out. So.
Is that an incident channel or a team channel? Is it the one that you're in?
So the one, this one's a test channel. The one that we use for our team, where we put our actual real incidents instead of our test incidents, is our stream of development and operations. It shows our GitHub check-ins. It shows anything that comes out of New Relic or PagerDuty or Sumo Logic. We put everything in there because we feel like that actually puts context to it. So those things are going on, like like you see an incident, you see someone check something in, and it starts going through.
Worldwide incident channel.
No. You want to keep this probably to the smaller team, yeah. So if it's not, you can. What we plan on doing for the ones where we have bigger teams and there's a lot of people in there, is that we would use the people on the service inside of PagerDuty and pull the names of that group of that service. Right, so we can gather that group of names from different places, but then you still have to like do these emails or identities match up to get into Outlook 365. You have another question? Yes, go for it.
Questions, but so you said you showed earlier that this automatically captures and pushes these logs to PagerDuty. But how does it? Does it just do from beginning to resolutions everything? Like, let's say you have your GitHub check-ins that are becoming part of it, or does it know somehow that these logs are related to the incident, so only pull these into PagerDuty?
It's everything from the time when this webhook gets hit here, that it shows this checklist, until this webhook gets here. Any discussion that happens. So you could have multiple incidents going on, right?
Right.
And you would actually push those things. And that's another thing that people have had a lot of questions about, like multiple incidents go on. Isn't that kind of like, someone could be thinking that they're doing something because of incident A, and they're doing it because of incident B, and then so that's context that is often lost when you try to get this like separation and stuff. So we feel like that's actually good context until it gets to be too much, and then you deal with it then. So I kind of follow usually Yagni of you're not going to need it when I'm designing things. Like we'll deal with that when we actually have that problem. But that's a great question. That's tons of conversations on that particular thing. These are great questions. Any other questions? Yes.
This seems to work really well with very dispersed, widely dispersed teams. What happens if you're in a war room? Do you add a protocol to say everybody needs to be in this Slack room commenting as we're talking? As there's discussion.
So yeah, when people are
in person.
yeah, so even working remote, like we have that persistent video chat channel. So a lot of that stuff is not going to get picked up, but I do have a neat thing to show you coming up too. In a few slides. Okay, so now we're done, and we say, Alexa, start Slacker. I need to enunciate. I need more water. Alexa, start Slacker.
What would you like to post in Slack?
React success.
Success reaction sent.
Yes. So if you want to create your own skill, then you just go to developer.amazon.com and authenticate with however you authenticate to Amazon. The way this works is you define a JSON schema and provide sample utterances. So I provided create a new incident for, and then the reason. The echo will use the word that it hears here as a literal, which is actually kind of scary because it could not understand me right if I, need water or whatever. So the use of the word the use of the literal type is actually deprecated. However, it still works, but it's sort of problematic because it's what it actually heard. So the way that I should have done this is to use slots, where you use a specific word. Here you can see that I defined, when I was doing the PagerDuty stuff, latest, first, or all for the PagerDuty incident part, which actually comes in here. So you can define what those words actually are. One thing I ran into when I was developing this was anytime I would say like the number of the incident instead of latest or whatever, I'd say like 235. It would take that 2, and I think it thought it was like TO, and it would just like resolve incident 35, which is like a one that's from a really long time ago. So if I would say 235, it would do 135 because it thought that 2 was like TO, and it would just do 135, which didn't work out so well. So there's actually, it's a growing type of technology, which is called voice design. There's like an entire discipline that's emerging around this. And they're trying to put rules together on like how to be effective at this. So you can go out to like again the developer.amazon.com and read more about that. It's really interesting stuff. So this is kind of what I walked you through, like what I had shown you before. And so what I added in here was the echo, and I'm calling out to code that's on AWS Lambda, which is called serverless technology. And that serverless technology is throwing things over to PagerDuty and actually using a webhook and throwing things into Slack. So have you guys ever heard of serverless technology? By show of hands. Anyone? Anybody heard of AWS Lambda? You can run code without provisioning servers, which is really super awesome. So I wrote this little bit of node code, and I put it out here in Lambda, and you only pay for the compute time that you consume. So there's no charge when your code's not running. So with Lambda, you can run code for virtually any type of application or backend service with like zero administration. So you kind of get to this idea of like no ops to a degree, because you can just push it out there using the serverless stuff, very similar to how you push Git code. You just upload your code to Lambda and it takes care of everything else. Lambda functions can be written in Node.js, Python, or Java. They hopefully are going to add a couple more languages here at AWS, the conference coming up. I simply took the work that was started by Tim Wagner and added a few things to it. So the Lambda functions that I used here, so I just pretty much had an else if, and that's the part like as far as like that PagerDuty act intent, that is what glues things together. That's what I built into that JSON on the Alexa side. All the code that I used for Lambda that I showed you today is open source. If you guys want to try to repeat the experience, so this has been a side project that I've worked on while I was the Lambda part while I was working on the actual incident workflow. So the Echo, I think it might be cheaper now. It comes in at close to like $200. I've also got this working with a Raspberry Pi, which is somewhere between $5 and $35. And if you want to try this out for free, there's echosim.io. So if you don't have the money or want to go buy an Echo, you can actually take the skills that they have out there and use echosim.io. There's a little bit, it kind of sucks because it's push to talk. You actually have to hit a button. It's not like it's just sitting there listening to you all the time. As I said before, I work at Hearst. One of the things that we have in the Alexa Skills Store already is the L horoscopes from the Astro Twins. So this comes from our company. You can download this and use it on your Echo. This is by far the coolest project that I've seen in this space. It's a script that listens in on meetings that I'm supposed to be paying attention to and pings me in HipChat. I didn't write this one, so I'm just telling you about it. When my name is mentioned, it sends me a transcript of what was said in the minute before my name was mentioned and sometime after that. And it also plays an audio file out loud 15 seconds after my name was mentioned, which is a recording of me saying, "Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on mute there." It uses IBM's Watson's, the text-to-speech Watson API for the audio to text, and it currently relies on Splunk as a data source, but that can be extended to use some open source tool instead. And you can get that at Josh Newland's Say What. There's also an article that he wrote about this, but it's super awesome the way you can use this technology.
Do you use it?
I haven't actually got that up and running currently. It's something that I started playing with or whatever. The other thing that it uses is Python, which I'm not good at. It uses Uberi's speech recognition, PyAudio, and an API wrapper around that. I couldn't get that portion of it working. I got Splunk free. No, I think that the other part was you have to have Splunk Enterprise. You can't use Splunk free. So I would have to rewrite some of the things, and then I got down the route of, well, I want to switch out the data store, and then pretty much I had wasted 2 or 3 nights, and I didn't get anywhere with it. So, that's all I have. If you guys have questions on any of that, or if you just want to hear Alexa tell us jokes. Alexa, tell me a joke. Alexa, tell me a joke.
Have you been hearing about the corduroy pillow?
That might have been the whole joke. Sometimes they're really corny. My kids love this.
Have her tell you a dirty joke.
Does that work?
And it's I tried it once just to see what would come up, but it's kind of funny.
Oh,
It's appropriate for crowds so far.
Alexa, tell me a dirty joke.
Want to hear a dirty joke? A boy fell in some mud. How about a clean joke? He had a shower.
Oh, that's about the level of the jokes that my daughters tell. That's awesome.
They're
have to-
good dirty jokes, so.
So I have a question. Did you guys start the Slack channel for your incidents, and did you find that it helped save time, or by doing that, or what were you guys doing before that was just not working?
So there's a couple of things there. With the businesses we were working with, we didn't know, like how long their incidents were happening, how often they had them. So the first thing was we wanted to get them to go through PagerDuty so that we could like start measuring, right? Because we didn't know if it was a good situation or bad situation. We just wanted to know and start gathering information. And then from there, we've gotten really positive feedback. We started with HipChat probably a year and a half ago, and then we switched over to Slack, and it was actually a very easy transition. Slack worked with us very well, and we moved all of our history over the course of a weekend with an upload, and then everybody was just moved over to Slack, like all of the identities and everything. So we don't have the measurements at this point to know. The response has been very positive. but we kind of need that beforehand and that after. So I've worked with a group recently, about a month ago, to start switching over to this. The problem was they were the ones that volunteered, and they have incidents roughly every like 3 weeks because they've already done a lot of the really smart work ahead of time to make sure that they got their incidence numbers down. We do have a couple of groups that could benefit from this greatly. So we're gathering numbers from them right now in PagerDuty, and then we're going to try to implement moving the stuff into Slack and see if we can make it a lot better. But yes, that's exactly what we're working towards. No, we don't have any like super awesome like graphs yet of showing how it goes better.
Did you ever have any issues or concerns with a lot of this incident data being on Slack or their servers or being out there?
That's a great question. We have had a couple of groups that are concerned about like Slack in general because it is only software as a service and they're in regulated industries. But we've worked with Slack on that. We actually had, that was one of the drivers while we moved from HipChat to Slack, was inside of HipChat, when you do attachments, they are obscured, but they are not secured as S3 buckets. So we started moving to Slack because that was a big deal for one of the security groups. But yes, it's a common conversation that we have over and over with each group. Different concerns from each one, even ones in the same industry. It kind of comes down to like what they're concerned about. All right. Hope you guys had a good nap. Then I think we're done. Awesome. Thank you.